Hey, my name is... Hey, welcome to my shop. My name is Dan, and today we're going to be talking about a few different subjects, and we're going to be reviewing what's in this box. Now, really to tell you, I'm not a real big guy on unboxings. I think it's a very millennial kind of project. For some reason, I don't get excited about taking stuff out of packages. In fact, if you've ever bought something that was shrunk wrap in one of those hard plastic kind of shrink wraps, and then you've got to try to figure out how to get it out of it. Trying not to scar it up too bad, getting it out of its packaging. Oh, yeah, I got it out. Oh man, I think I'm just going to take the other one back. That was too much work. And by the way, you can really cut up your hands seriously as you're trying to get those things apart. Don't enjoy packaging at all. So, but I'm going to be showing you what's in this box. So I guess I'll be doing that in unpackaging. But I wanted to talk about a couple other things before we get started here. First of all, the shop is in a huge mess. Don't be looking around because it is still a big mess, but things are finding... Now, what did I tell you? There you go. I just told you not to look around. Oh my goodness. Anyways, yeah, it's a big mess right now, but things are falling into place. They're finding homes, and I've been testing the pegboard back here. This has been kind of fun. I'll put something up on it and see if I use that tool in a few days. And if I don't, then chances are it's probably gonna, it's kind of like tryouts for my tools on the pegboard. It's like I got my own team back here. So that's one thing. But I've been thinking about some other things that I want to look into doing as part of this channel and our crusade to build model airplanes. One of them is I would like to look into building some kind of a resource list, because today there is not quite the resources that we used to have, say 10 or 15 years ago. Many companies have gone out of business. Many supply places have gone out of business. There's just not as many around anymore. So I'm looking at trying to figure out a way where we can have, like, I don't know if it'd be a website or if something else as a place where if you're looking for something, like right now, I'm looking really hard for a custom set of landing gear for a model airplane that I've got back over here. And it's going to be hard to find. It's for a Spitfire with an 83-inch wing on it. And you know, there's just not that many of them out there. So I have to try to find somebody who is making some kind of a gear that might work for it, or I could somehow adapt it into it. So that's a problem. But the bottom line is I would like to have like a list or a site or something where if I'm looking for something, like if I need carbon fiber push rods, or if I need a spinner or something like that, that is not so commonly found at, like, say, Horizon Hobby or something, especially with scale needs, scale parts, and they're very hard to come by anymore because the people who are doing it just aren't doing it anymore. So give me some suggestions, if you could think of any, of what you would like to see if you had some kind of a resource list. Now, I know there's a few out there, but I don't think they're in depth enough. And some of them are over in depth. In other words, they're listing, they would list somebody like Horizon Hobby or Tower Hobby, which, by the way, are the same company, as an extensive list for all this. And sometimes they hit, sometimes they miss. I want something for builders, people who are building either kits or from plans or scratch building or anything like that. I would like to be able to build some kind of a resource list and give that to you to use if you ever need it. I get tons of questions every day. The most common one is balsa. Where do you get your balsa from? And man, I could think back in the day, back in the day, we used to be able to find balsa. There must have been, I think the other day I was just driving around in my car and I was thinking about it. I think there were 8 different sources available. And now I think we're down to 2. There's probably a few more out there that I don't know about, but there's balsa that's good for us as a hobby. And then there's balsa, like if you go into a Michael's or one of those kind of places like a Joann Fabric and they have a balsa available, one sheet costs like $10. And it's like, that's not right. And it's usually not a really good grade balsa for what we do. We need them to be light. We need to have consistent grain. A lot of the ones you find in like a Michaels or anything is coming from a company that is providing them with a pretty hard piece of wood. So you wouldn't be able to use it for sheeting or anything like that. But anyways, that's one project I'm working on. The other project is, of course, I'm trying to get to starting more building. And today we're going to talk about the Havilland Beaver here from Mustache Models. Hey, welcome back to the shop. It's really good to see you here again. All right, so here we are back at the table, and I've finally got this one cleaned off to a point where I could start building on it. And this is a project I'm a little behind in. I mean, looking back now, I think I've had this kit for a little over a year. That's a long time. I wanted to get going on this sooner, but you know, life happened. So let's go ahead and start taking a look at the contents of that kit. This one here is from Mustache Models. Unfortunately, if you have an aspiration to put this model together, you're going to run into a problem. They're not being produced anymore, but there were so many of them that are out there in the wild, you might be able to find somebody who's willing to sell their kit to you, and that's kind of what I had to do. The person who designed this one is choosing to no longer be in the business of producing either kits or ARFs. He had talked a little bit about the possibility of turning this kit into an ARF and offering that. But anyway, this is ending up being it's the end of the road. So if you're going to find one, you could put like a classified on one of the hobby sites like RC Groups or RC Universe, and maybe somebody will get a hold of you that's trying to sell one of these. Keep your eye on eBay. You never know. Some of these pop up. Or you could just do a straight out Google search for sale Mustache Models. This is the, what do they call this one? You got to get all your numbers right. DHC-2 Beaver. So, and there's other things out there available like floats and things like that. That's what my intention is going to be. I'm going to turn this into a float plane eventually. Because beavers, you know, it's funny. I've seen people talking about it. They've said, wow, you know, I've never seen a beaver that has wheels. I've seen them on skis and I've seen them on floats. And they're used for such a workhorse, like up in the Canada and Alaska areas for transportation, for cargo, and for things like recreation, like hauling fishermen around to specific lakes if you're staying in a lodge up there. One of these days I want to do that. That sounds like so much fun. But anyways, so let's get started here. This is the instruction manual in there. It is in black and white, and it's got the basics in here. If you want, there's also from their website at this point a colored version of this. And sometimes it's easier to tell what's going on in a picture if it's in color. When you get the different shades, you can understand what kind of piece of wood it is or placement or so forth. And so I'm going to be using my laptop back here and keeping it on the bench so I can look at it as I go. There's also, I think the instructions might have been updated a little bit. And there's people, like if you find a building thread where somebody was putting it together, you'll get lots of comments from other people that were building it. And things might have changed, or they found an easier way, or they found a defect in the cutting or something like that that they got around, and that's always helpful. So anyways, I'll put a link in here to the website, or it's on RC Universe. Somebody put one of these together, and there was a lot of input from other modelers, so you can read that too. But anyways, start pulling them apart. These are obviously going to be some windows for the cabin. These are inside details. So these are the vacuum packs, or a vacuum, what do they call that? Vacuum forming of the seats in it. So it's a 4-seater, pretty cool. Let's see here what we got. This is the cowl, and the cowl looks like it's had a little bit of shaping from being squashed in there for a long time. So we might have to heat it up and reform it to fit. We'll see what happens. But anyways, yep, that's the cowl. Miscellaneous, these look like intakes. And I know that they were saying there's 2 different model versions you can make with this, and you use specific intakes for which version. I don't know the specifics of it right now, and about time I go to mount them, I'll start figuring out which one I want to have. So these are going to go on the cowl as pseudo air intakes. Let's keep going here. This looks like a strut that probably, this is if you're going to use the wheels. This would be the, looks like the wheel pants kind of. No. Anyways, that's got to be a strut for the landing gear or something of that nature. And speaking of landing gear, a couple of pieces of aluminum here. That's a clever way to do it. Instead of having one big one, he actually split it right in the middle with a cross cut. So you end up putting 6 screws into it, into the base plate on the bottom of the plane. And I believe that these are also going to be used in my floats. I think that these are going to be the front run on it, and then it's going to have a second set that's going to go in the back that comes with the float kit, which is over in the parts area. These are the plans. And this is actually kind of a unique airplane to build. Oh, there, I can see right there, it's the struts. That's what those pieces were over there. This is a very unique airplane. It's not done like a typical plan or a kit that I've ever done before. The guy really did a great job on having the parts be laser, kind of like lock parts. So in other words, to help with the alignment, which is always a struggle when you're building a plane, making sure that everything stays aligned and you're building the plane straight. There's a lot of parts that lock into each other to assure that the plane is going together straight and, you know, square. And so as a result, one of the comments I've read about this plane is a lot of the building is not done on a set of plans. You might check it for alignment or something like that, but a lot of it is just done on a flat table. Like there's some squabbish about the fin on the back, and it is just built on a flat table. You just gonna build it by hand and eyeball it and make sure it's straight. And that bothers a lot of builders. Sometimes, you know, they want to be able to pin it to the board to make sure that it's going to be perfectly flat. And this particular plane, because of the nature of all of the curviness to it and everything, it's just not possible to do. So he found a very unique way to do it. We'll be experiencing that down the road. Let's see what we got here. We're starting to get into some. This looks like a windshield and more of the windows in the cabin. Okay. There's a lot of parts in here. A lot of hardware. I don't think I'll go through each bag of hardware. That is probably an underside former. That's the way it looks anyways. It looks like it's going to be an underside former. It looks like it's built for water to flow over it, or water and air. Okay. Let's see here. Aerodynamics, I guess. All right. So these are wingtips. There's 2 of those in there. Here's another scoop. I might hold these up, and yeah, okay, good. I want to make sure that you can see it in that camera too. All right, so let's go for a big part. Well, actually, let's get the long ones out of the way first. So this looks like it's part of the wing socket setup. I see 1, 2, 3 pieces of socket. I'm not sure how many pieces this wing could be made out to. That's a good question. But it's looking like it's, this is obviously the carbon fiber spar that goes through it. There's some push rods and plastic sleeves in here. And then there's some just plain old empty plastic sleeves. So we probably end up cutting the push rods to fit a certain thing. Okay, let's grab this. This is interesting. This is all of the wood parts. And they're heavy. I don't think I want to get all of these out, but I'll just tell you, everything is nicely packed in here. One of the things about this kit is it is, like I was saying before, it's a laser cut kit. And let's take this out. I want to show you this so that you can get an idea of what. Man, I got to be careful. I could feel some of those laser cut parts are ready to just fall out of the template. All right, so if you could see that, this is got, you can see all the different, see, he puts a lot of these, they're kind of like tabs. And what happens is some part is going to end up poking through that and helping the alignment. Here's a flap horn. Here's another one. These are hatch and liner. Let's see, it says hatch liner. So that's going to go obviously on a hatch to kind of toughen it up. Here's a right ply shear. And this looks like it's about, I'd say it's a 1/16, this material. Here's some really thin material. This looks like it's about 64th, and it's cowl cheeks. These are obviously going to be kind of curved around something. And, you know, just all these parts, and they are ready to fall out of these, which is what you look for when you're looking for something that's laser cut, because there's nothing more disappointing in getting laser cut and they didn't make the cut either deep enough or through it, or the tabs holding what's in there. So you can, I don't know if you could see that. Right there at the very edge, you can see these parts where the line stops and there's like a completion of the wood over there. That's the only thing holding that in at this point. And so it's really easy to just take a single razor blade and just pop through that little section, one of those or one of those, and then the part just falls out. And it's so nice to have it that way. Some of these ones with the charring that occurs, it might be a good idea to just take a very gentle sweep with like a 220 or a 320 sandpaper, just barely run it over it, just so that you can get that charring off, because the char is not really conducive to a good bond with like CA glue or anything like that. The char tends to break away as part of the bond. So something you might want to keep a thought on if you're working with laser cut parts. And just more of these. Okay, so you can see there, these are all of the different, let's see here, looks like this is mostly a rudder. And I think this here is the stabilizer, vertical, that's the vertical stabilizer actually, VS on there. So horizontal stabilizer, and all these different parts. So these are the ribs that are going to go out on the stabilizer, and then obviously a sheeting is going to go over the top of it. So let me just hold this bag up here. I don't want to take every single piece of wood out and show you, because oh, this is a dowel. Okay, it's probably going to go in the airplane. Anyways, I will hold up the end of it just so that you can kind of get an idea. Hopefully that's in focus. I'll do it on this one too. Maybe that's a better one. But anyways, you can see all of the different wood in there. This is the completed kit. I'm going to flip it over because I think the bottom is mostly just, there's more plywood on there. Lots of plywood parts in this one, and they're all laser cut. So this is going to be a great kit. Interesting thing about it is it's a 91-inch wingspan, and it only takes a DLE 20 sized engine is what the designer designed it for. And so I called him and said, should I put a 30 in it because we're at a higher altitude? And he recommended not to. He said he thought it was the 20 was plenty of power. And he might be right. I've really been impressed with the DLE 20 engine. So Mark's got one in one of his planes, and it is a very powerful engine. So we'll give it a try and see if it works all right. And as far as what else is left in the box, it's mostly hardware. So we got packet 3, 1, and 4. Well, I'm guessing this last one is, yep, it's 5. So these are lots of interesting stuff in there. I can see a whole row of rare earth magnets. So parts of this plane are going to be held together with rare earth magnets. And oh, he's got these cool things. It's like if you're joining a wing, I really like these for holding the wing halves together. So if you got like a socket and a carbon fiber and you got to put the wing parts together, like a 3-piece wing or something like that, it's really cool to be able to have these to twist into it to hold it. And it's the screws that have like the actual thumb grip built onto it. Really cool. It's just one of my nice, really nice touch. I'm looking at the hardware in here. There is some rust on those threads. I'm having a feeling that that might get replaced down the road unless I can get this stuff to work. Sometimes the hardware that comes in kits, especially when they're produced in China or some other place like that, you get metric stuff and it doesn't go overseas well and it rusts eventually, so you end up having to spruce it up. The other thing you could do is replace the hardware in them, which is kind of a pain, but maybe you don't have to replace all of it. But you could replace it with our ASEs, American Standards, and you'll be happier with it. Like these push rods in here, like I was looking on there, you know, sometimes you like just having a set of decent 662 or 632 push rods, or something, not 632, 440, I guess. And there'll be nice chrome ones from like Dubro or one of the other companies that produces them, if you want to do it. I don't see anything really seriously wrong with this hardware. It might just take a little dosing of WD-40 to kind of... Did you hear that? We just got overflown by a plane, pretty low. Okay, so anyways, there is a set of CA hinges in here. I've heard from some people that these CA hinges are not very good. I've got the original SIG brand of CA hinge, and I like those, and they've always done well for me. But, you know, we'll just take a look at the hardware as we go and make sure everything's okay. Looks like a couple of push rods in here. These are pretty stout. Let's see. This one here, not so much. That's a long one. I don't even know what that would be used for. That could be... I have no idea. Something this big. Maybe it's like a rudder. It could be a rudder. I don't know. And then this one here is a pretty stout. This is a 440 rod. And it's a 36er. So, yeah. Lots of parts here. But anyways, we're going to get started on this plane. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and work on it. And then I'll just check back with you every now and then with progress to show how it's going. If something comes up that's kind of tricky, I might show it to you because I might be just, you know, kind of proud I figured out how to fix it or whatever. Mark is already underway on this plane. He has completed one wing half and he's starting to work on the elevator and a couple other areas. And he's also looked at the engine box, which is going to be a modification. We looked at the way that the designer built the engine box for that 22cc or that 20cc, and don't really feel that good about it. So we're probably going to put a solid aluminum mount that's produced by one of the aftermarket companies, and it'll work well for that. So we'll see how things go. We're making a few changes. Part of the fun of building kits is you can spend time kind of doing what they call kit bashing, which means you can make changes to it that fit the way that you like to have things on your plane. And one of these days, we're going to have a sit down here and we'll talk about policy, which sounds really weird for model airplanes, but policy is kind of the way that you get things done and the way you do things over and over on a daily basis, whether it's the way that you charge your batteries or it's the way that you set up your ailerons on a plane that you're building or the way that you program it into your radio. Policy becomes kind of important because policy kind of makes it so things are consistent. I mean, especially on those radios, and we'll get into radios at some day here too, where we're talking about programming, because there is so much you can do with those radios now. And the funniest part is Mark and I are just terrible at this, and finally I've come up with a thing. When we put a plane in there, it's like if you're pounding out a plane, say every, I don't know, even if it's like 6 months, every 6 months you got a new plane that you got to put into your radio because you're going to go fly it. And you have the radio set up, but you can't, you know, they don't label the switches like they used to. They don't tell you what conformance you have to have, like the dual rates on my old Futaba radio used to say dual rate, up, down, high, low, or whatever. And so you had it right there, and it was stuck there. You could not change it. Well, with these new radios we got, you could probably fly the whole plane with on-off switches if you wanted to, but you don't. But you do have the ability to decide where you want to have things. And I always want to have things like the flaps on my left hand, but like, you know, the index finger is going to be running it. Or if I'm going to make the flaps put on a switch, I'll put them on a 3-position switch on that same side, because as you're flying it with the yoke, the hard part becomes, okay, I'm going to drop the flaps, but I want to have my finger on that elevator to make sure that, you know, it doesn't balloon up or down or whatever. So many details. But we found that every now and then we go to program a new plane and we'd start programming the switches, and then we go back and we go to use another plane and we find out we've completely done the switches differently from plane to plane. And when you get to be our age, that kind of confusing, that you just wrecked a day. So anyways, we're trying to find a way so that we can standardize the switches where we want them, and then we'll just use that on every single plane. Landing gear, flaps, and if they don't have landing gear and flaps, we put them on a switch that we wouldn't normally need to use anyways. So, policy, it's coming up. We'll talk about it at a different time. But for now, I'm going to get this stuff back in the box and start pulling out the parts I need for steps 1 and 2. So, thanks for stopping in today. It was really great to see you again. We'll see you next time. Oh, man. If I just took and put this on the belt sander, sand the crap out of it.